Good evening and welcome to the second in our series of Beyond Chulent. And I just thank you everyone for joining, and it's lovely to see all these familiar faces again. So we do appreciate you zooming in on a Wednesday night. Just for those of you that don't know me, I'm Charlene and I am the UGIA Scotland fundraising manager. And I will be your hostess for the next 50 minutes or so. So just a couple of housekeeping rules. People are just going to keep joining. We will mute everybody just to sort of keep the noise level down, but please feel free to send any questions in the chat and I will keep an eye on it, and we will, I'll ask as many as I can, but we will, at the end of the evening, we'll have time for Q&As and for everyone just to sort of hang out and chat a bit. So don't worry, there will be plenty of time. Also suggest, in order to see Sydney better when she's doing her cooking, if you want to put your gallery view onto speaker view, then she will be in your full screen. Well, I'll be in your full screen when I'm speaking, but when Sydney's demonstrating and talking, you'll get a better view of her. So I just want to start by introducing Sydney. I mean, it's such a pleasure to interview Sydney because she is normally the interviewer and never the interviewee. So it's really lovely to have her as a guest on this platform. So welcome, Sydney. For those of you that haven't met Sydney, she is our Scotland Youth Programmes Coordinator, and we are so privileged to have her in Scotland. She's just full of passion and enthusiasm, and she's a breath of fresh air. So in the space of a week, last week we were in Ethiopia, and in the middle of lockdown, we have managed to transport ourselves to India. And Sydney is going to share with us tonight a couple of very famous recipes from India, or one which is dal and the other is aloo gobi. So we are going to just do a little bit of chatting and a little bit of cooking all at the same time. So we're just going to start with bringing Sydney in, and just to give you a little bit of her background, that she has spent, prior to her taking up the role in Scotland, she spent 2 years in India from 2017 to 2019. And I just have to look at my notes to make sure I get it completely correct. She was working for the JDC as a Jewish educator at the Evelyn Peter Jewish Community Centre in Mumbai. So Sydney, if you would like to come in and just share with us a little bit about what work the JDC does and what your role was in Mumbai.
Yes, so thanks everyone. It's very exciting to be here and to speak to everybody. Obviously, we see each other quite often, but this is a little bit of a different program, so it's very exciting. So before I moved to Glasgow, I was based in Mumbai, which was a lot of fun, very different, obviously a very different place than Glasgow. So I worked at the Evelyn Peters Jewish Community Centre, which is a Jewish community center in Mumbai. It's working primarily with the Bene Israel community, which we're going to speak about in a little bit, but it's a local community. They've been in Mumbai for 2,000 years, which is a lot of years. And so I was doing different Jewish educational projects, similar to what I'm doing here. Here in Glasgow, I work mostly with children and teenagers, and in Mumbai, I was working with all ages. Different projects that we had were I taught Hebrew, I taught Torah class on Tuesdays, I led a Rosh Chodesh group for older women, I helped out in the Jewish nursing home, I taught Sunday school. There was just lots and lots of different projects that I was involved in, which was always something different, always something new, a lot of fun. The GCC also has a welfare program for Jewish community members who are doing cash assistance, medical assistance, that sort of thing. And they run this amazing Jewish community center, and they run Shabbatons and all sorts of programs. So I had a great time working there.
And there was one thing that you said to me about, which was, you spent a lot of time with volunteers in Mumbai, and you hosted quite a lot of Friday night dinners for the volunteers.
Yeah, so Mumbai is obviously a traveler hotspot. I know a few of you have traveled to India. We had a lot of people, a lot of Israelis coming through, and also a lot of volunteers. So there's a program called the Gabriel Project Mumbai, which is an Israeli charity that works in a slum in north of Mumbai called Kalva, and they bring volunteers, so from America, Israel, London, few Londoners, and we would have these Shabbat dinners, and it was a really nice place. I had this apartment, and it was a place where the local young adults who were my friends would come by, and we would have Shabbat dinners, and I would host these volunteers, and I would host sometimes just random travelers that we found, and it was a really nice place. So one of the recipes that I want to share with you is this aloo gobi. It's not an authentic aloo gobi. Okay? An authentic aloo gobi requires a lot of chopping, a lot of spices. Some traditional households in India, they would employ a masala wala whose entire job it was to mix spices and put them into curries. This is not like that. A warning. But it's something easy and fast, because for me it was hard to sort of you know, like I'm used to matzo ball soup and lakshan kugel, and like, you know, like that's what I usually cook for a Shabbat dinner.
Yeah. And that's not readily available, I would imagine, in Mumbai.
Yeah, people would look at my matzo balls and be like, what? Like, why do you make this? Like, I don't understand. So I had to make things that were spicy and delicious, also for Indian people, and also for my my nice Jewish palate, my Ashkenazi palate, sorry.
Your Ashkenazi palate, absolutely. So what are the ingredients of aloo gobi?
So, this aloo gobi is a dry aloo gobi, which means that it doesn't have that curry sauce. Aloo means potato. I have little potato chunks. I'll bring close for you to see. Just really small. I mean, it's whatever. You can cut it however you want. I have cauliflower, gobi. Also cut it however. I like them a bit bigger so they don't burn, but I like my potatoes smaller so they get nice and squishy. And I've cut them up. I think the recipe said 4 potatoes. I've done 2. It doesn't really matter. Whatever you want. Mix them up in a bowl. I've pre-cut them to make it nice and quick. This is literally the fastest recipe you'll ever make. Oil, any oil, doesn't matter. This is olive oil. Dump on. I usually try and put less oil, but this recipe is better with a bit more oil. And then what you want to pop on is really anything. Salt, important. Salt. Pepper. I love pepper, so I'm gonna dump a good.
Okay.
You could use garam masala. The thing about garam masala is garam masala just means hot spice. It's so we think of garam masala as like a specific thing, but it really could be anything. So this is curry powder. In India, I used to get like a specific spice blend, and if you get anything from like a local shop or anything, like it really doesn't matter. Curry powder. Yeah. Charlene was telling me this morning that she likes precise measurements, and
yeah, I don't know. I mean, I can't. If somebody gives me a recipe, I need to buy the exact size dish. And when they say like a bite size, I never understand what that means, or like a pinch or a thumbnail size. I don't quite understand what that means. It's like a precise measurement.
Yeah, I dump cayenne on top of literally everything that I cook. A healthy dose of cayenne, and then mix it up. A good mixing so all the oil and all the spices get on, especially because you don't want a chunk of cayenne getting stuck between your cauliflower. And also one thing you can do with this is if you have time, you could soak it in water just before and drain it off. That's also helpful if you're trying to get bugs out of cauliflower. In India, I did most of my shopping. There was a little, it's called a bhajiwala, like a vegetable shop, like, but not a store, just like a little man with a cart. And I would get all my vegetables there. It was right across the street from my house, and they were lovely and they were cheap and they were right there. But I'm just gonna wash my hands because they're covered in pepper. They were also covered with bugs. The flour that I bought and the rice were sold in these huge sacks that were just on the ground on the street in Mumbai.
Oh my gosh.
They're always full of bugs, so very important to wash.
How much did you pay for a bag of rice like that?
40 rupees. I think that's 40p for a kilo. Is that similar to what you would pay here?
No. No, you pay. I don't know what the weight is, but rice is it can be quite expensive. But I mean, nothing. 40p a kilo sounds to me very cheap.
Yeah, this
Even
is a
with
kilo.
bugs.
Pop it into a pan, anything as such. Yeah, I'll give you a nice close-up of my aloo gobi and into the oven. whatever temperature you want for however long you want, maybe 45 minutes, maybe an hour.
What do you mean maybe? Like, yeah.
Yeah, pop it in the oven until
the potatoes.
until it's the texture that you want. Like if it, I like it softer.
Okay.
This is also a really nice thing. So I would make it for Friday night dinner and then put it on the plata, like covered in tinfoil, the plata, like the hot plate for Shabbat. And then I would put it in the fridge overnight. And then for Shabbat lunch, I would take it out and put it back on the plata to heat up. And that was like the perfect consistency, nice and like soft.
Wow. And it goes well with chicken or fish, or if you wanted to.
I'm a vegetarian, so
yeah, that's right, you are.
I would serve it as like a side, but you could, yeah, like a side dish, like you know how like you put all the little salads for Shabbat.
Lovely. Okay, great. So that's one dish in the oven, and you have got some lentils, haven't you? Got on the boil for the dal behind the olive oil. There's some lentils, right?
Yeah. So I use these red lentils. I bought them at Lidl. You can use different types of lentils. In India, there's hundreds of different types of lentils. So many. On my very first day in India, my boss took me to Big Bazaar, the big grocery store, and he walked me through every type of lentil. And I can't remember because it was my first day and everything was very overwhelming. But I use these ones. I bought them at Lidl. I put them in the pot, the Canadian method of cooking rice and lentils. So 1 part lentils to 3 parts water. Sometimes I put a bit more and boil it. When it's boiling, cover it and then just let it simmer, usually like half an hour.
Okay. So have we got time to chat a bit more whilst the lentils are simmering?
Yeah, yes.
Good. Okay, so you were 2 years in India, and then in 2019 you made that brave decision of coming to Scotland. Quite a contrast. What inspired you to come to Scotland, to leave the hot climate of India and come to the slightly cooler climate of Glasgow?
Yeah, it is slightly cooler, but in the Himalayas it can be quite chilly. So
yeah, that's true. True.
Yeah, I love this idea of like small Jewish communities. So I grew up in Calgary, which is larger than Mumbai. I think there's about 8,000 Jews. I could be wrong in Calgary. Yeah, and I like this small, close-knit Jewish communities. And so Mumbai was very much that. There's not an official number, but people say between 2,000 and 4,000 Jews in Mumbai. And coming to Glasgow seemed like a natural progression to continue doing similar work, working with Jewish communities, doing all, community development, and they're both very like creative, small jobs. Yeah, and then I get to come live in this lovely community, which is, very lovely.
Oh, well, it's absolutely lovely to have you. I mean, do you miss being in India?
Do I miss India? Yeah.
You do. Yeah.
You do. Yeah, but there's a lot of things that remind me. So, I mean, obviously, Glasgow has, tons of reminders, like, lots of Indian food. I get sometimes when I go to the corner store, I order my groceries in Hindi for a good reminder.
Oh.
And of course, I get to practice with Michelin, which is good fun. I do really miss it, but I keep in close contact with the people from Mumbai, with the community there, and I speak to them. And yeah, there's a lot of connections between Scotland and India, which is something that I didn't really know about before I decided to come to Scotland, but then sort of started appearing to me everywhere. I picked up some random books, just like in random tourist shops in India that were about Scottish explorers of India. And I looked more into it, and apparently a large percentage, far larger than it should have been, of the members of the East India Company were Scottish, not British. And when you look at the industries, like the tea industries, which was one of their main industries that they were doing, they were actually Scottish. So like you'll be walking in the Himalayas in these like picturesque tea villages near Darjeeling, and all of the tea estates are called like Glenburn and Glenloch and like and then once I was walking this summer, I was hiking in Glenfinnan here in Scotland, and it just, everything about the hills, the misty hills and the water and everything, I was like, oh my gosh, this is India. Like, it looks so similar, and it just, you know, it made me very nostalgic for.
Oh, yeah, because you were saying today that there was, well, now that you're in a massive, Sydney's really surprised when I told her that I've never been really proper hiking around the north of Scotland. I was explaining that as a kid growing up, we always had to go to Manchester and Blackpool on holiday. We never got to travel around Scotland. And she has done so much in the time that you have been here. You have explored so much. And she was saying today how, you know, similar the panoramic views of Scotland are to your time in India, which is interesting, you know, the sort of scenic views.
Yeah, so that we like find reminders of home, whether that's home Canada, home India, home Scotland, you know, we find these, or Israel, that we find these connections wherever we are, which is really special.
It is, it's gorgeous. How are the lentils? I don't want them to be
the lentils. Yeah.
You're doing all right?
Let me lift it up so you can see, kind of. It's a bit watery. They solidify a lot. You can't really see it without me spilling it on the computer, but they do solidify quite a bit. So I'm going to turn them off at this point. I mean, it is watery. I can stir it. See if you can.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm going to turn that off, and I'm going to leave it covered. And a good reminder, Charlene. But there's another part to our lentils. Okay, should I show you the second part to the lentils?
Yes, please do. Yes.
Okay. So the lentils right now are unflavored. There's nothing, not even salt in them. So we're going to make some spices, and we're going to do the spices separate. So I have my frying pan. I have my medium flame, and we're going to do something called tadka, or also it's a funny RD. It's tadka, like that. So basically what it means is we heat the oil.
What language is that you've just said?
It's Hindi. So I'm using olive oil. It really doesn't matter. You can use whatever oil you would like. Heat up a good amount. Is that a good description, Charlene?
Yeah.
Good amount of oil. And once it's hot, we're going to add in cumin. I have whole cumin, but sometimes I use ground cumin. And we're going to add in.
I've never seen that before. Wow.
Really?
No, I only use the ground cumin, yeah.
It's called jeera in Hindi. Yeah, this is from Locavore on Victoria Road. So, I mean, I just grab a, you can also use ground. I think I probably put a measurement in the cookbook if you want a measurement. And cinnamon, you really should use a cinnamon stick. I don't have a cinnamon stick, so we're going to pop in some ground cinnamon. And you just want to wait until it fries up a bit. So, I mean, you can't really see it, but you want it to be bubbling. And you also want it to be enough oil that the oil can kind of go around in the pan. And we're going to let it boil. Not boil, that's not the right word. But like it should be
sizzling.
Yeah, there we go.
Okay.
And we'll just let it do that for a minute, but you want to be careful that it doesn't burn, because that's not tasty.
No, okay.
Give it 1 minute. So the next thing we're going to add is the onions. I pre-chop them to this size. It's better if you chop them like really small, but I haven't got the patience for that. So
by the way, if anyone's got any questions for Sydney while she's doing this, please feel free to put them in the chat.
Okay, so I've done 1 onion. Whoop. It's in 2 cups. 1 onion. Garlic, I love a lot of garlic, so I put 6 cloves, but you can put in whatever. Chopped. And ginger also. Better if you chop it smaller, but again. No time for that. And oh, it smells so good.
I bet. Oh, these spices sizzling together. Mm.
And we'll just let that fry for a few minutes. And then we'll come back to that.
Okay. So maybe just whilst we're waiting for all that to, all the fusion of the spices, just maybe go back to a little bit about, the Jewish communities in India. So I know with the Bnei Israels, they came to India around the 1st or 2nd century CE, and they were, the story is that they were shipwrecked, and then that's how they sort of ended up settling. Now, there's many different Jewish communities dotted around India. Maybe you could just sort of share with us a little bit about, where they are. I think, have you got a map that you could share with us on the screen? Yeah. Just where they're, because India is obviously it's massive, and where we all are there.
So I've prepared a map for us. This is a map of India. It's quite a big country. And we have different Jewish communities in distinct different places, and some of them do overlap. So I work with the Bnei Israel community, which is mainly here in Mumbai. You can see me circling here. They landed south of Mumbai on the coast in a place called Navgaon. It's a tiny village, and they lived there. And so, yeah, you're right. There was a shipwreck. And the story is that there were 7 couples that survived, but they lost all of their things. So they didn't have a Torah. They didn't have books. They didn't have these objects of Jewish life, but they did have their traditions. And so they became oil pressers, mainly coconut and betel nut oil. And they didn't work on Saturdays. And that was like what kept them distinct. And they also didn't eat shellfish, which is one of the mainstays of the diet there, shellfish. They didn't eat shellfish in line with kashrut. And so hundreds of years later, when they were reconnected to this sort of mainstream of Jewish culture, they had these distinct things that they still did. And that was what really alerted the other people that these were Jews, because they had been living for many hundreds of years in these tribal villages. And by this point, they were speaking the local language, Marathi, and so the kashrut and the Shabbat were really something that helped keep them apart. So you might be also familiar with other communities. So we have the Kochini Jews all the way down here in Cochin. These were Jews that came, I wrote down the date, 950 BCE. And these were the traders of King Solomon, and they had a community in Cochin. Today, there's almost no Jews in Cochin. I think less than 20 Jews that are still living in Cochin, although many of them live in Israel. Today, there are Kochini communities in Israel. And there's a lot to see in Cochin. So I went to Cochin several times, and there's synagogues. There's murals, all sorts of Jewish murals. They have an area called Jewtown, which is sort of Jewish revival neighborhood. Not that there's many Jews who live there, but there's lots of tourist things that people can see. We have the Pardesi Jews. These are Jews that came in 1492 from Spain and Portugal. They also came to Cochin and also to Madras, which is now Chennai. And then we have these lost tribes. So the Bnei Ephraim, who are living in Andhra Pradesh, and the Bnei Menashe, who are living in these northeastern states in the Himalaya, almost in the Himalaya, not quite. And these are Jews today that we would call lost tribes. Scottish connection. They were actually converted to Christianity, to Catholicism, by Scottish missionaries in the 1800s. And then in recent years, different Israeli organizations have been converting them back en masse to Judaism, and they've been making aliyah. So there's now, several thousand Bnei Menashe Jews who are living in Israel. And and then we have the Baghdadi community, which came in the 1800s, and they came to Calcutta over here. They came to Delhi. They also came to Mumbai and to Pune and to Ahmedabad. And they were the Iraqi traders that you see elsewhere, like in Singapore and then all over Asia.
Fascinating. Yeah.
So Indian Jews is like a really wide spread, and like I specifically worked with this one community in Mumbai.
I have a question here actually from your mum. She asked, I'll read out what she said. Sydney, you shared with us that you used to host lovely Shabbat dinners in your home in India. We may have a vision of this with our Western words, can you describe the physical space, the furniture or lack of, and how together with your friends you created a warm, sacred place?
This is kind of a leading question because my mom knows the answer. Before we get there, I'm just going to dump a few more things in our frying pan.
Please do. Please tell us explicitly what you're dumping.
Okay. This is not yogurt, but half a can of chopped tomatoes. I use fresh tomatoes sometimes, but I had open canned tomatoes and it's easier. So let me show you the onions first. So the onions are like pretty well fried. They're not totally brown, but they are getting a bit like crispy on the edges. So that is when you want to add in your tomatoes. Then it makes a lot of noise. You're also going to add in
1 tin of tomatoes, Sydney. Was that one tin of tin tomatoes?
Yes, tin tomatoes. You're going to add in turmeric. How much? That much. Could do a bit more. My mom taught me not to do spices directly over my food, but yeah. And we're gonna add paprika. How much? That much. And salt. And then we're just going to stir it up.
Is dal like one of the most famous Indian foods? I mean, it's eaten by all Indians, right? I mean, it's a very kind of traditional dish that comes with a lot of meals.
Yeah, and there's different types of dal. But one thing, if you can see, like it's kind of like it's quite thick, like it's not watery, and we're gonna add this into the lentils, so I'll put that back on. And there's different types of dal. So you can have dal with spinach. Sorry, I'm just covering this and turning down the turning down the temperature a bit. You can get dal with spinach, you can get dal with different things, all sorts of different lentils. Dal is often served as a side though. So here we might think of it as a main dish. So like for dinner, I'm gonna eat rice with dal, and that's gonna be like my main dish. But in India, it's often served as like a side. Like you get a thali, which is a big metal plate. And your thali would have a few types of bread, so probably a chapati, which is like a tortilla kind of, and a papadam. Everyone in Britain knows what a papadam is. And you might also get naan, maybe you might also get rice, depending. So like all of your different carbs, and you would get maybe 2, 3, 4 different curries, and you would get also probably like a small bowl of dal, like, I mean, bigger than this, maybe like that size, like a little cup of dal. And you would get a dessert after. Okay. So yeah, we consider it more of a main dish, but they would consider it more of a side. Going back to my mom's question.
Absolutely.
While this is boiling up. So when we were preparing for this session, obviously these sessions are run by me and our shlichot in Manchester and Leeds, Sarah and Corinne, and we were comparing, like going to a foreign country and having this apartment that they give you and like adapting to this community. And they're showing me their beautiful fancy kitchens. And I sent them a picture of my kitchen in Mumbai, my house in Mumbai, which is basically, I mean, definitely smaller than this kitchen, Michelin's kitchen here. There's no furniture. So basically I had like a mattress on the floor and it was just a room. So you like walk in through the front door and the bed is like right there on the floor. There was a cupboard. There was like a little kitchen off to the side that just had a counter and like a gas burner. The bathroom was it was just a big room with like a shower head, which was fancy because a lot of people just have like a bucket shower. Like you fill up the bucket with the faucet and you dump it on your head. So it was very different. It was a lot to get used to, but I loved it. And we had this beautiful Shabbat vibe. I had my regulars, my close friends who would come every Shabbat, and sometimes we would have bigger Shabbats, and everybody would sit on my bed or sit on the floor around a like tiny little coffee table. And so basically we had this issue with the lights that the main room was my bedroom, and on Shabbat I don't turn the lights off. So like obviously I don't want the lights on when everyone's there, because then I have to sleep with the lights on. So we would just have the lights off, and everyone would sit in the dark around the one Shabbat candle, and we would all sit on the floor, and it was so magical. I loved it. It was like another world. The window had like frosted glass, and it was just like this tiny dark room, and all of my friends having Shabbat food. Ugh, it was amazing.
Wow, that sounds really special.
Yeah, it was.
And did you embed with the sort of local communities as well whilst you were? I mean, did you you hosted them a little bit too, as well as you sort of volunteers? Is that right?
Yeah. So they have a local youth group. They're called the JYP, the Jewish Youth Pioneers, and that's like the young adult group. And they were really all of my friends were from this Jewish Youth Pioneers. Yeah. So it definitely was not just tourists. We had you know, a lot of local people. And also in the JCC, in the Jewish Community Center, sometimes I would get to cook for other people. So I remember Yom Ha'atzmaut. It was a bit of a silly idea that I had. I wanted Israeli flag cupcakes. And everyone was like, why? Like, but I made 600 Israeli flag cupcakes in my little toaster oven that I had. And like, cupcakes are not something, like in India, they don't do cupcakes like that. And so it was like a bizarre thing, like a novelty to have these tiny little banana cupcakes with Israeli flags on top. And like, it was so fun to be able to share that with everyone.
Oh, that sounds so nice.
I'm just going to check really quick on the aloo gobi, because it could probably do with a stir at this point.
Yeah, you do that, and then I'm going to ask you a question by Michelle.
Michelle Wilson?
Yeah, Michelle Wilson.
Two Michelles. Okay, so yeah, it's coming along. I'm going to stir it up a bit. I'm going to pop that back in the oven.
Such a shame we can't come to your house for dinner.
Charlie, you can come pick up, and I'll give you takeaway.
Do you know what? I think I might. I think I might. So Michelle's asked, well, she's written, when I was in Kerala, the food was delicious, but almost always a bit spicy for me, although I like spicy. And even if they were cooking from scratch, for me, still too spicy. Did you like very spicy before you went to India, or did you grow to love it?
I don't know. I think I like spicy food. Yeah. I mean, before I went to India, so we had, from the JDC, they were sending people all over to Rwanda and to all over Europe and all over Israel. And we had this icebreaker question: what is one food that you could eat every day for the next year? And almost everyone said Indian food. And I was the only one going to India, and I felt very... I noticed, so back in November, when we were, running about the country, last November, a year, me and my friend went to this vegetarian Indian place in Edgware in London. He was a friend that I had been in India with. He was also working there doing something else. And we went to this Indian place and had Indian food, and it was so spicy. And I realized that in 2 months in Glasgow, I'd lost all of my ability to handle that.
Oh, interesting. So is that with all the fish and chips that you were eating since you got here?
No, it wasn't. But as you saw, I do still like a good dose of cayenne on my food. So yeah, hopefully.
Gorgeous. And how's the dal doing? How are the spices doing?
So the spices are, solidifying. Maybe I'll take the lid off and let it as you can see, it's getting good texture.
Mm-hmm.
And just so you know, like the larger process of what we're doing with this, we're going to keep frying these up a bit just until they brown a bit more, and then we're going to put them in the lentils, and then we're going to put that over the rice. So maybe I'll give that 1 more minute. Actually, I think it could be ready. Should we mix it up?
Yeah, love to see the finished product.
So first, let me turn off the stove. Got the lentils. They solidified a little bit. You can see the lentil texture. And right before you serve, not a lot before, you're just going to dump in everything from the frying pan. You're going to stir it up so it's all together.
Wow.
You get a nice orange color. Can you see it? Kind of.
Yeah. You can.
I don't want to spill it.
Yeah.
But I'll pop it in a bowl so that you can see. So how do we serve it? We have our rice. And in different parts of India, they do more rice, and in other parts, they do more breads, depending on where it grows. Like in the north, there's they have more breads, more like naan, chapati, just because that's what grows there. And in the south, more rice. I like it with rice. So we've got our rice in the bowl, and then we're gonna pop on top the dal. Oh yes, yum. And then what's nice is a bit of yogurt. Ideally not honey Greek yogurt, ideally some plain yogurt, but in the absence of that, we can have some honey Greek and a bit of lemon for just like the perfect sour taste. Squeeze that on. Yes. There we go. There. Oh, you can't see.
No, don't tip it because yeah, you'll. It looks lovely. It looks fabulous.
Can you see?
Especially with the piece of lemon on the side.
Yeah. I'll take a photo and I'll send it to everyone after.
Yeah. But you could have the dal on its own without the rice and oh.
Technology.
Yeah.
Should we try it?
Please do.
I hope it's okay. Wow. Very tasty. You're welcome to come over for a takeaway.
Yeah, you'll have a queue of people waiting at your door tonight.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much. We have sent the recipe book, so people, it is all the recipes and from last week are in the book, which we've emailed. If anyone needs a copy, then just drop us a line on the chat and we'll send it across to you. So the floor is open for any questions to Sydney about India, Scotland, cooking. Feel free. We can. You can actually unmute yourself. So you don't need us to do that. So Anita has asked, how do you serve the aloo gobi?
Yeah. So I mean, it's still cooking away. Maybe I'll bring it out.
And yeah, we all need to see what's coming out of the oven, Sydney.
We have the aloo gobi. It might need a few more minutes just so the potatoes get nice and soft. And you could eat it as a main. Like a traditional aloo gobi is like a curry that you would eat over rice with bread. This is a dry one. So probably don't want to put it over rice. I like it just as like a side dish. So if I'm making another curry, I would have it as a side dish. Or like I said, I put it on a Shabbat table as a side dish. Yeah. A traditional aloo gobi would have that red gravy with the tomatoes and the onions, which is also delicious, and that would go over rice or bread.
Okay. Great. Have we any other questions? As I said, you're all free to unmute yourselves and chat.
Sydney, do you actually speak
question for Sydney? Oh, sorry. Hilary, you go first.
Oh, okay. Sydney, do you speak Hindi?
No. I know I can get around in Hindi. So I can read, which is really helpful when traveling. And I can speak like enough basic Hindi, which became really special because I would travel to these villages where people only spoke Hindi. And just being able to speak to people, just basically how many kids do you have? what are you doing? You know, like stuff like that really makes such a difference, I think. And so that was really, really special. One of my my last travels was to this tiny village out in the in the desert, the Thar Desert in Rajasthan. And I went to this tiny village, and all of the women, they would go every afternoon to fetch water from the well. And that was what they did. And they carried it back. They had these like rubber sacks that went down into the well, and they pulled up their water and they schlepped it all the way across the desert back to their houses because they had no plumbing. And you know, it was just so special just to be able to stand there and make basic small talk with them and help them pull their water. Like that's one of my like fondest memories of India. But one of the struggles is that there's actually 22, I want to say 22, but I could be off on that, national languages. And so Hindi, a lot of people have a general understanding of Hindi, but in Mumbai, the local language is Marathi, which is a different language. So yeah, it's difficult with language, but a lot of people speak English. All of my classes were in English. All of my work was in English.
So my question is for Sydney, when you can make these beautiful dishes, why is it 9 times out of 10 when I ask you what you're having to eat, you tell me an egg?
That's confidential information, Adele.
You could make your big load of the food and just keep eating it. It looks so lovely. Better than an egg. Or you could have curried egg.
Yes, I could do that.
Next time I come and ask you, you say curried egg.
Okay. We'll see. Any other questions?
Yeah, well, she has Scotch eggs, Adele.
It's a Scotch. That has to have meat round it.
I know.
I came in at a bad time. We had a lot of problems coming in, so I missed the beginning. I'm very interested to know how you ended up in India. Did you actually live there with your family, or was it on an annual or a yearly travel, or what was it?
Yeah, so I didn't actually share the specifics of that. So the JDC is the American Jewish Joint Distribution Committee. They work all around the world. They're one of the largest Jewish charities supporting Jewish life. So in communities in Eastern Europe, and also they have also like international development projects as well. And so they run a program called the Jewish Service Corps, which is for young college graduates to go and support programming in these communities. And so I did that. It was meant to be a year, and I loved it so much that I stayed for 2. And yeah, it was an amazing experience, because I was working, there was 8 people who worked at the JCC, and I was the only non-Indian who worked there. So it was a really local experience. I got to travel a lot. I got to, you know, live in most people who go to Mumbai go to Churchgate, which is the southern tourist area. And I got to live in a neighborhood where there was absolutely no foreigners. I got to buy my groceries on the street. It was a really special experience. And if anybody has any, you know, college graduate aged people, it's an amazing program, and they're running a virtual version this year, so you can look into it. They're looking for a British kid.
Sydney, I was wondering if you could talk a little bit
Yeah,
about.
I'd like to ask you something, Sydney.
Yeah, Michelle Wilson. Oh, who was
So I'm just thinking that Definite Show kitchen lies empty most of the week, and that maybe if we talk nicely to the rabbi, we could set up a kosher in restaurant or cafe for parts of the week. You running it? I mean, I'm giving lessons as well.
Okay, Michelle, you
Under normal circumstances, I mean.
Michelle, you can come over and pack
Pardon?
Hanukkah boxes, and I'll go run the Indian kitchen, okay? A good
Yeah,
plan.
that's fine. That's fine.
Okay, other Michelle, my mom.
So my understanding of the Indian kitchen, it's a little bit different than our Western kitchen. You said that very few people actually have the oven to cook in, and I know it was a big deal for you to get like a little toaster oven. So maybe share a little bit, like, how do the people cook if they don't have an oven?
Yeah, so people don't have ovens. An interesting thing about Indian ovens, the Hindi word for oven is tandoor, and the Hebrew word for oven is tanur, practically the same. Wow, fascinating. People don't often have ovens, so a lot of things are done on the stovetop. Also, people don't generally have like a built-in stove like this, but they would just have a portable gas burner on their counter. So one thing is like challah is not really so traditional within the Jewish community. Now some people do have challah and some people do have ovens, but the traditional challah that they have is kind of like it's kind of like matzah, but thinner than matzah, and like a really thin cracker. And that's what they use for hamotzi, because you can make it on the stovetop. A lot of cooking is done like that. Generally, people will cook in the morning. So a lot of people have cooks. I'm talking like middle class people would have a cook that comes in the morning and cooks up a big thing of curry or even 2 curries, and then everybody takes it in their little metal tiffin lunchbox with them. And they would eat the 1 or 2 curries throughout the day with chapatis or rice. And one thing that was so nice, so at work, everyone would bring their tiffin with their different curries, and I would bring Israeli salad. And everybody would share. So we would sit at a big long table pre-COVID, and everyone would have like 1 or 2 different curries, and we would pass them around, and we would all share, and we get like a little taste of everybody's curry for that day, which was really special, and it was a really nice time for us. I wanted to do that here in the JCC here, but nobody eats lunch together there. So.
Well, Sydney, thank you so much. I'm going to come round tomorrow and pick up a takeaway if the offer is there, because it looks so delicious. It was really fascinating just hearing a little bit about your journey as well, and your India journey, your journey to Scotland. And thank you for sharing. Thank you for being part of this community. It's not only have you integrated, but you've just brought so much from your own sort of work experience and personal experience. So it's a real joy. So thank you very much. Thank you everyone for joining in. It's lovely to see you all, and I hope we'll be coming around to check that you've all been cooking all the recipes that you've been learning. Next week is our last session in this series, which we will be joined by Karine, who's our shlicha in Leeds, and we're going to Morocco next week. So please Zoom in. Sydney will send you all a reminder next week with the Zoom details, and it will be lovely to see you all next Wednesday as well.